There's nothing that stresses me out more than waiting for a final update from a company that I interviewed with, especially when you've gone through all the rounds and the presentations and have really put in the work for this company. What's worse is when you have zero idea on where you stand in comparison to other candidates or just where you stand in general based on what they're looking for. But I figured out a way to ease the process a little bit, and it has also given me the transparency I need on where I stand in these job interviews. Honestly, I wish I knew this sooner in my career, especially during the early days. It would have helped me so much in those job searching seasons. Hi everyone, my name is Jean Marie, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be sharing to you the one question that everyone needs to be asking during their job interviews. I'm not gonna drag this on and I'm just gonna tell you what the question is, but to give you context, this is gonna address two things. Number one, it'll tell you where you stand in comparison to other candidates or in comparison to this role that they're looking for. And number two, it'll give you an opportunity to fill in the gaps that they might have missed during the interview or that you might not have shared to them and they actually would have found valuable. So the question you need to be asking is, so far in the process, where do I stand in comparison to the other candidates? And is there anything that you hoped to see but haven't seen yet in my background, in my experience as I have gone through the interviews over the past few days? Or is there anything in my background and in my experience that you would have hoped to see but haven't seen yet? Or something along those lines. You need to be asking this towards the end of the process. You can't be asking this in your first interview, right? So this is applicable when you are towards the final stages. And a lot of times they will even initiate the question, something like, where are you in your job search and where does company XYZ stand? Are you close to any other companies that you're interviewing with? A lot of times they would actually ask you that when you're towards the end because they also want to know, because they're also interviewing other candidates. They want to feel out, are they like last in your list? So they genuinely want to know, and you should answer them with transparency and return the question back to them and say something like what I just said. So after you answer that, you will say, actually, I want to throw the question back at you. Where do you think I stand in comparison to other candidates? And I guess now that we have had multiple interviews with the team, you guys have seen my presentation. Is anything missing that you're hoping to see in my background and in my experience? And then they would answer that, right? Let's say you would have an idea if you've like nailed everything. They'd say something like, no, actually you've been great. This is what we're looking for, and you definitely showcase that, blah 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 blah. Or they would tell you something like, we really need someone who is la di da di da, and so far I think you're great, but we are missing blah blah blah, we haven't seen blah blah blah. Once they tell you that, then this is your opportunity to fill that gap, right? You want to be able to address that missing thing. If you actually have that experience, if you actually are able to fill that gap, and maybe you just didn't have the opportunity to say it over the last few interviews or showcase it during your presentation, this is your opportunity to do that. And you're going to respond to it like, I'm glad you said that because actually blah 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 blah. I was actually able to I don't know if you missed it in my resume, but I've done this, I've done that. And actually in our last conversation I mentioned blah blah blah, because they could forget. Like, you could have said it before, but they could definitely forget. They've interviewed multiple people. They're not going to remember everything you said. So it's your job to make sure that you cover all the bases, and this is the best way to do it. Again, this is addressing two things. for you to make sure you fill the gaps and for you to know where you stand. It's a perfect question to ask. It is a justified question to ask. They ask this to candidates all the time. It's just right that we also ask them this. And you have to remember they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them as a potential employer. You know, it's a two-way street. I'm gonna now show you an example, an actual example of my interview with a CEO. This was the last and final interview I've had with this company. I'm talking to the CEO and he asked me if I had any questions. I threw in the question right there. It was a very casual conversation. But watch this as an actual live example of this particular tip that I'm giving.
If you have any questions for me, happy to take them.
I mean, I guess just one general question on so far, we've met twice and you've seen my background. And I know you've mentioned some technical skills that are required or expected, but so far where do I stand compared to like other candidates, or is there anything you wish you are seeing or you've seen so far, I guess, in my experience?
No, yeah, absolutely. So I would say you stand very, very much on the top, I would say, right? What I like about you is that you have the executive presence, so you're very presentable, and then you understand the domain, the payments domain. That's why I wanted to have a brief discussion on pre-op. But of course, you are technical as well, right? So all three meet. The only thing the meeting in my mind is, since we're remote first, we're always looking to keep it able to pull up the sleeves, to just learn. So that's the only thing. Curious, right? Like, you're willing to dive head first to do into a startup, because startups are crazy, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but that's one of the reasons that caught my eye for the role, because I did have my 5.5 years experience in a startup. So I was the 70th employee and had to wear like 20 hats, just because that's how a startup works. But it was very fulfilling and something I definitely did not have as much in a bigger company like. So that's something I'm very excited to do, and definitely have the experience of working in a place where there's just no structure yet. And I had to build the structure, and I had to set the bar, and I had to set the processes. And I think that's one of the biggest parts that I enjoyed, and being able to put those things in place and pass it along and help teammates and help train new people for the processes that I built. I love that part. So.
Okay. Excellent. Perfect.
As you can see there, he did mention that there was something he wished he had seen, right? For background, I shared my startup experience multiple times during the interview process. But again, they could forget it. They could mix you up with another candidate or whatever. And you have to remember that you're not the only one in their mind during the last few weeks. I had been sharing my strong startup background experience. Strong background. I had been sharing my strong startup experience from the beginning of my interview and all throughout, because that's one of the things I really wanted to highlight. And I guess he missed it or he forgot. So this was an opportunity for me to make sure he did it. And good thing he said that this is what he wanted to see and haven't seen yet. I was given an opportunity to re-emphasize that, and during the waiting game it was just much easier, right? Because then I knew that's what he thought was missing. I was able to address that. And I also asked this twice. So I asked this to the final interview CEO, but typically you would have like a catch up with the recruiter or the HR of the company, right? So there you could also ask the question again. They could also give you a different angle because they would have a better idea. They've talked to the multiple people who's interviewed you, not just that one person. Typically, they also ask you the question first and where they stand, like I said before. So I hope this was helpful. I think this is a really helpful strategy and question that everyone needs to be asking. I didn't really practice this early on in my career. I wish I did, but never too late. And if you find these tips helpful, feel free to follow along. Click that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.